Today we are going to be stirring the pot with one of the biggest pot stirrers in Flames Nation, James Johnson.
You're Locked On Flames, your daily podcast on the Calgary Flames. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Locked On Flames. As always, I am your host, Jess Belmosto, and thank you so much for joining me. Today, I have a special guest, James Johnson of the Win Column, who we're going to talk about a little bit of everything in terms of the Flames rebuilding versus their next steps, and of course, the NHL draft. Make sure you're subscribed to Locked On Flames wherever you get your podcast, as well as YouTube. We are here for you Monday through Friday, 5 days a week, your team every day. How are you, JJ?
I'm doing good, Jess. Thanks for having me on. I know the virtual listeners can't. Why did I say virtual listeners? Just the listeners. They won't be able to see my pot stirring motion, but there you go.
Yes.
It's great to be here. I know since I was last on, you've joined the Win Column and you're writing over there a little bit. So now we're kind of coworkers, if you want to put it in that term, even though it's not like a job, but yeah, it's kind of cool that you've joined us there, and yeah, so great to be back.
Yes, well, thank you for joining me, and thank you for recruiting me for the Win Column. It's a good group of people over there who have a variety of opinions and can kind of see where the Flames are at and where they need to go. And I guess that's where we'll start today, because you are a very smart person. Not to boost your ego or anything, but for those of you who maybe don't know JJ, he has been part of the Flames media sphere in some capacity for at least as long as I've been covering the team. It's been 5 years now, which is absurd. But you have a very unique way of looking at things. It's not just from the fan perspective. It is from the, I want my team to win a cup, realistically, in my lifetime, before I'm old and gray and decrepit. And I think that that's a fair way. And, I think part of the issue is people think that criticizing your team means you're not a fan, and wanting them to rebuild means why, can you explain your thought process and just kind of where you're at?
Yeah. So first off, I mean, I have been in the Flames sphere I think I joined Twitter in 2019 or 2020 and kind of gave my takes on the Flames since then. And I'm kind of in the lucky position, and we kind of both are, where we're not directly affiliated with the team, or not being paid by the team or by one of their sponsors like Sportsnet to produce content. So we kind of have that unique ability to be unfiltered. And there's a lot of people that would posture and say that I am very unfiltered, and fair enough. I think there's a lot of good media people in Calgary, and their kind of job right now is not to criticize the organization per se. I think there was a time, especially a few years ago, where the Flames media did a lot of criticizing of especially the coach. And I mean, it was rightfully so, but there was a lot of criticism. So I think the organization has kind of taken that back. And you've seen that with media. Their position now is okay, here's what Craig Conroy is going to do, and we're going to explain why he's doing that based on his vision.
Yeah.
As I said, our kind of position is, I'm still a relatively young person, so people will be like, "Oh, you're stupid. Why are you saying these things?" But I think I have a generally good idea of what a smart organization does, and people can disagree with me. That's the nature of the game. People can have their own opinions. I can also have my opinions. So that's a long-winded way for me to say, like, I think the Flames should do a full rebuild. I've been on that train since 2019, since they lost to Colorado first round. And like my opinion hasn't changed since then. There's been a lot of movement from 2019 to now on the player side, but they still haven't done a full scale rebuild. And fortunately, we know from former CEO now John Bean that is not a word that the organization can use, and that's a whole other subject. But from my opinion, I think I'm allowed to present my feelings towards what I think a successful organization can be. And I'm in that position because I'm not directly affiliated to like most of the Flames media. So yeah.
Definitely. And I guess one thing I wanted to kind of like add was you were one of the first people to mention the idea of trading Jacob Markstrom. And it wasn't, like right before the trade deadline where it may make sense. It was relatively, I don't want to say early on in this season, but it was, again, you were ahead of the curve. You were on this before it was like the popular train to be on. So, right. I mean, and we're going to talk about more potential trades next, but do you have any one that you see other than, I guess, Rasmus Anderson that could be traded this summer?
Yeah. To put it frankly, I don't know if that's what the Flames are going to do, which it would not be what I would do, but I think if there was somebody they would look to move, it's probably Blake Coleman. But again, he's like your veteran core, whatever, 6-7 guys that you brought in, and you're dead set on that you need 6 veterans, which that's a whole other conversation. But and Coleman is just due to the fact that one, his no trade clause is now a modified no trade clause, and forgive me, I don't know the exact amount of teams. I think it's like 8 or 10 or something that he can't be traded to or whatever. But and also the fact that he's a left shot winger, and the Flames have a lot of those. So if besides Anderson, I think that's maybe the guy that they would move if something came about, similar to when they moved Mangiapane last year, although Mangiapane bluntly told them that he wasn't re-signing, so they kind of had to look to move, and Washington offered a very good return in a second rounder. So yeah, if I would look to move a guy like Nazem Kadri, and we can kind of go into that after, but just due to the center market. But if I was to guess from what the Flames are going to do, I'd say maybe Blake Coleman, but I doubt it.
Well, we will just have to wait and see, because there is still a whole lot of offseason ahead of us. And coming up next on Locked On Flames, we're going to talk about the never-ending cycle of middle 6 forwards that the Flames have, and maybe what they should do with some of them instead of trying to play them all up in the lineup and have unrealistic expectations. Coming up next on Locked On Flames. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. I love the salt and vinegar no shell variety because they are the perfect grab and go snack on busy days. Get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Thanks everyone for hanging out with us today on Locked On Flames. Make sure you go check out the win column to read some great articles and draft profiles ahead of this season's draft. We touched upon it right before the break of, the Flames have players to move. There's no shortage of those. But based on, years past drafting and what they've brought into the organization from trades or free agency, they've kind of created a mess.
Yeah.
There are a lot of forwards in this group that either don't necessarily fit or they are being asked to do things that are just not within their reach. Or maybe you're like Connor Zary and not necessarily getting the benefit of the doubt when it comes to playing center. And kind of reminds me of Sam Bennett in terms of just misuse and just annoyance and not doing anything with him. But I guess what is your solution, or how do you start unpacking the Igor Sharangoviches, oh my God, Martin Pospisil, like all of these players that are just kind of there?
Yeah, and I think I've used this phrase a lot in talking in other places and in my pieces. Like when the Flames entered their whatever the heck they're doing right now.
Transitional period.
Thank you. Yeah, that works.
Rebuild, whatever we're calling. I don't know what we're calling it.
In 2022-23, like when it kind of began to be clear that this team was just treading in whatever, just mediocrity, and they had like 3 second, third lines. They had a pretty good defense, and Markstrom was hot and cold, but for the most part, I'd say he was a good goalie, except for the playoffs against Edmonton. But and now you kind of I haven't seen anything from them over this, I guess, 3 seasons. 3 season, whatever plan that they put in place, or 2.5 or 2, whatever it is, that shows me that they're going to come out any different. Like Dustin Wolf, probably an upgrade over Jacob Markstrom, although I still am hesitant with goaltending position as a whole right now, just because Edmonton is in with Stuart Skinner and they ran through Kemper, Hill, and Ottinger, but Wolf is probably an upgrade on Markstrom. If Perek and Brustevich and some other defense prospects hit, they might have as good of a defense as they had before. And then forward is going to be exactly the same, where you don't have like your stereotypical first line, right? You have Nazem Kadri, who, to give him credit, has been playing above his weight class in Calgary. You have like Huberdeau, who was a first liner many, many moons ago. And you have a lot of guys, like you mentioned, Sharangovich, Pospisil, Farabee, Zary, Frost, like Backlund. I don't know if I mentioned Coleman. Like there's
not yet.
There you go. Like there's so many guys, and it's the same thing last year. I wrote an article last summer and I said, okay, going into the draft and free agency, like the Flames have too many wingers. They have too many guys. Like Matt Coronado is coming up and he can't play. And they traded Mangiapane, and I was like, okay, there's a spot opening. This is good. This is good. You're finally seeing the problem that you've created, where you have a bunch of middle six wingers making like $4 to $6 million, which is the last position that good teams build, but that's another topic. And like it looked like you had a spot for Coronado, and then you sign Anthony Mantha on day one of free agency, which he's friends with Huberdeau or whatever, It's a
Yeah.
1-year deal. You could flip him at the deadline. I kind of see why you did it. You don't want to just hand Matt Coronado 20 minutes a night and say, our job here is done. Here you go. But as we saw in training camp, Coronado was quite good, and he had to be sent to the AHL because there just wasn't room for him to play.
There was nowhere for him to go.
And I don't want to say luckily for Coronado, but unfortunately for Mantha, he suffers that terrible injury on like game 7 or 8 or whatever it is.
Yeah,
And
I was at that game in Montreal.
There you go.
Where Coronado scored the overtime winner.
There you go.
So it's like he was writing his own fate.
Just the passing of the torch, kind of in like a very dark way, but yeah. So you have, and then Matt Coronado. Now he's making whatever, he signed like a $52.5 million deal because he became an NHLer and he finally got the ice time to show he was that player. And I don't know if you have anybody in the system right now pushing, like I can't even, like Gridden, Basha, they're probably both a year or two away still. You have Suniev, maybe you will push this year. That's a guy. But if one of those guys impresses in camp,
where are they going to go?
Or Hanzik and whatever, like there's no room as we sit here on June 3rd. So it's a long phrased response to just say like, this is exactly what they had before. This is exactly how they built for years. No other team, frankly, no good team builds on the wings. That's the last position that teams build on. And the Flames are, for whatever reason, just they love those, like, again, those like middle six forwards making like 5 and change or something. Like then you got to give Sharangovich his contract, which is the exact amount of money just to fit right in there. And you acquire Farabee just because he's making that exact amount of money.
I think what's, to your point of this is the same position they've been in for years, is the argument about Matthew Phillips playing in the Flames organization and being able to make the jump. I mean, Jacob Pelletier, which, I mean, we saw happen eventually, but obviously gets traded. And there were times where it was, is Connor Zary just going to, is he going to get injured again and have to spend another season in the AHL? And then obviously he makes the jump, but there's no more like guys that are like on the fringe or on the cusp of really jumping in to the lineup and making that immediate impact offensively.
Right. Yeah, and it's frustrating. And like, to use Phillips as an example, he's probably not an NHLer, and that's okay. But when, I don't know when that was, 2021, 2022, when myself and a bunch of other people were saying, throw this guy in the lineup. No, that was 2022, 23, because that was just that dreadful year under Daryl Sutter.
Yes.
And we were like, we need something, man. Like, please give us anything.
A crumb of reasons to watch this game.
Exactly. And they refused, and it sucks because you don't know what you have until you play him in the lineup.
Right.
Good or bad. You don't know what Macklin Celebrini is until he plays his 20 games in the NHL. You don't know what Matthew Phillips is until you play him a couple games, right? So it's kind of funny that Phillips scored his first and potentially only NHL goal against the Flames as a member of the Washington Capitals. Like, I think that's just kind of poetic, but
it feels very Flames like.
Exactly.
Like, anything that feels like, I don't know how to explain it, but just like it's something that only could happen to the Flames. It is truly something that could only happen to the Flames. And I mean, this year with the draft coming up, they don't have their own first round pick, but they do have two, thanks to Florida and New Jersey. And we're going to talk more about them coming up next. But is there anything else you wanted to add about this wonderful log jam with the Flames forward group?
I think we talked about wingers, but centers would be a similar position as well, where you have Zari. He's probably a winger, since you have Frost and Backlund as like your second and third,
Somewhere.
and then Kadri as your first. But that's another position that, given where the Flames are drafting, and we'll of course get into that in our next segment, but where they're picking right now, you're probably going to get like a second or third line center max. So
We
again,
already have a few of those.
to my point, like you entered this reset, and then you're going to come out with it with what, Frost and player X and Zeri fighting for second and third line center minutes as Backlund and Kadri kind of age out. Yeah. It's another, you don't have those top of the lineup guys, and it's no team wins a lot of games in the postseason without it. Let's just put it.
Absolutely. And I guess quickly before we move on, do you think the Flames should take a stab at Marco Rossi?
I've had this question posed to me quite a bit. My answer is no, which a lot of people disagree with, and that's okay. Marco Rossi is 23 years old. He's a center. He's kind of your Craig Conroy retool guy, and that's okay if people want him. I can see the reasoning for it. I look at a guy who was playing fourth line minutes in Minnesota in the playoffs. He's 5'9", which I'm not trying to size him or anything and say he won't be an effective center, but that is, and he's not a good faceoff. He's I think he's below 46% the last 3 years or something like that.
Fit right in Calgary.
Yeah, he definitely would. But it's just, I don't think he's your solution. He's maybe a second line center at best, and I think he'll actually end up on the wing in 2 or 3 years, just because on a team that's loaded with centers, I don't think he would be, if the Wild go and get Brock Nelson, I think, and they keep Rossi, I think Rossi's going to the wing, for example. But yeah, Rossi, to me, there's just nothing truly exciting about him as an acquisition. Yeah, he's a guy who scored quite a few points this year, but his analytics, his numbers, there's nothing in his game. And I mentioned the face-off stats and his size. To me, there's nothing truly exciting about him. And if you're Minnesota, who Judd Brackett is their draft guru and the guy who drafted Pedersen and Hughes in Vancouver and has now joined the Wild, and they've drafted quite a few great players over the last few years. And if an organization is giving up a player like Rossi at age 23, to me, that's a big red flag. It's the same thing as Chicago giving up Kirby Dach at age 20, 21, whatever he was. Teams kind of know who these players are. They look to trade them, and that should be a red flag. And another reason why I don't think the Flames can just magically pull a number one center out of their hat. Jack Eichel is probably the only player like that available over the last 15, 20 years. And he had injury scares. There was a lot of teams that were like, I don't want that. I don't want to deal with that. So yeah, again, Rossi, to me, it's like shrug shoulder. I wouldn't give up futures for him. If Kadri wants to go there and you get Rossi back as part of a package, I'm all for it. And you bridge him, because I wouldn't sign Rossi long term. I'd bridge him for like 2 or 3 years at like $6 million or something. But if that's something the Flames do, they trade an older player and bring back Rossi, I'm all for it. But I wouldn't give up like a first or a second or anything like that.
All right, well, there you guys have it. That was, again, could be a fantastic general manager. If anybody knows a link to apply, send it over. But coming up next, we're going to wrap the show with some draft talk because, well, the Flames still have some work to do. Thanks, everyone, for hanging out with us today on Locked On Flames. Make sure you are following the show wherever you get your podcasts, as well as YouTube. We are here for you Monday through Friday, 5 days a week, your Calgary Flames every day. And later this month, the first decentralized draft takes place.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I don't think it's going to be as fun, but I mean, is it supposed to be fun if it's business? I don't think so, but I don't know. I just like some form of entertainment, crumbs of entertainment after postseason. But what are your thoughts on where the Flames are picking? And, you know, you'd mentioned what they might be able to grab at 18 and probably 32.
Yeah, probably. I don't know. Hopefully 32, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Just to start off with the draft, I think it's going to be really weird to see, like, similar to the NFL, where somebody's selected and then you like shake the like Gary Bettman's hand and you get a jersey and that's going to be it. Like, it is kind of nice to see, even though it takes a really long time and there's some teams that overdo it, but it is kind of nice to see like the GM and the director of scouting and
that presentation sort of
and have everybody there. But I do think it will be an opportunity for some more trade action where you're not like looking over your shoulder trying to see that no one's looking at what you're doing. I think we will see some more trades, but yeah, this draft is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of people that have said it's not a good draft, and I don't think it has the depth of other years. Completely fair. I will say it is kind of funny. Like, Flames fans said that all year. Oh, we don't care about the 2025 draft, like whatever. But to me, I was like this is the draft where there's Matthew Schaefer, and then like 9 centers might go in a row, right? Like,
and what did the Flames actually need? A true center.
Exactly. Yeah.
Would be nice.
I did forget to mention Martone and Eklund are probably in there as well, but the underlying theme is that from pick like 1 to 13, you're probably going to see like 10 or 11 centers gone, which is crazy. And there's a lot of good players. I mean, Michael Misa was the guy who I wanted from the get-go. 1, because he's a fantastic player, and 2, because the Flames have his brother and a guy who played with him in Zane Parekh. Would have been a really cool story. But as for where the Flames are at, like 18th overall, you might get a guy in like that top center echelon who slips to them. It's a possibility, but you're probably looking at kind of that second tier of Cole Reshny, Braden Coots, Ben Kindle, if you consider him a center, which some do, but a majority do not. So, like, there's a lot of guys kind of in that second and third tier range. And ideally, I think if you're the Flames, you're looking at center first and probably left defense or right wing after that. we don't need any more left wingers, please. Unless, I mean, I don't really think there's anybody even name-worthy in this class. Maybe Lakovic, but like whatever. Like just you don't need any more. You don't need right D. Like you draft 3 who look pretty good last year.
Mm-hmm.
And like just if there's a right defenseman and a left winger and a center that you all have on the board, take the center.
Right? Yeah, seriously.
And
that feels like the better option of the 3.
It would be nice, and I think that's what the Flames are going to do from what I've seen and read and heard, that they'll target a center, which is good, which is what they need to do. But again, you're not to put a ceiling on a guy who's 17, 18, 19 years old, but you're probably looking at like Cole Reshny. I really like I think he would be a great selection at 18th. That's probably like a second line dynamic kind of guy, but that's like a maximum. And like Braden Coots is probably closer to like a Michael Backlund kind of, like you're a good kind of reliable center. So you're not really shooting for that top echelon that that fans would like them to be. But they're still good players. I mean, Ivan Ryabkin is a name that is circulated a lot through the Flames fan base, kind of specifically for the 32nd pick or 31st pick, because he's a guy who has some character issues but has like the skill level where he was kind of considered a top 10 talent at the start of the year. So for the Flames, you don't need to take like your Milton Gastrin, which is a great name, but your guy that like projects to be like a bottom 6 defensively reliable player, maybe like a middle 6 player. You need boomer bust guys where you need to kind of raise that ceiling a little bit more. And if he busts, that's okay. You have several other
a whole lot of other people to choose from.
Exactly.
So you mentioned character issues, and we know that this has been an issue with the Flames. What do you know specifically what those character issues are or supposedly are?
Yeah, I to be honest, I can't really tell you that much. That's basically just off of what I've read and heard from others. I don't know anything specifically about him, but I know he has shifted around quite a bit. He was in Russia, and then he was over in the USHL, and I think I've heard some stuff about him going to the CHL next year, but I don't quote me on that because again, I'm not like your draft expert or your prospect insider or anything like that, but he's a guy who there's been some questions about kind of your commitment on like a shift to shift basis, not to like say he's Pierre-Luc Dubois or anything in Columbus, right? Like that's just an example that comes to mind of like a guy who we're like
he's in and out kind of.
Exactly. The potential is there, but he's just like not showing it. So in no way am I saying, no way am I comparing him to Pierre-Luc Dubois, but that's a guy who might fall on draft day. And if he's there at 31, 32, I think that would be an interesting guy to kind of maybe take a bit of a chance on. And I think that's kind of the position that the Flames need to be in, because I don't know how many middle 6 guys you can put on one team, but there's a roster limit.
Well, Yeah, no, so we'll just have to see how everything unfolds between the Cup final and the draft, and then we'll blink and it's free agency, and then it's gonna be camp before we know it. So, guess before I let you go, what is your Stanley Cup final prediction?
Ooh. If you look at just like the two teams last year compared to this year, I think Florida has upgraded their roster from last year, whereas Edmonton is roughly the same, although I do like the Wallman upgrade.
Mm-hmm.
I think it might be Edmonton's year. Just like I don't really like saying it, but
No.
also like last year I was cheering for the Panthers 110%. This year I'm kind of like I don't really care who wins. I just want both teams to be out of the news, and I want to like
Yeah.
not hear about them for a good couple months. So
I think that's a very fair approach to this. That's yeah. All right.
yeah,
Well,
I'm definitely not rooting for the Oilers. I don't want anyone to mistake that. But I'm
no.
definitely
Thank you
not
for the clarification.
definitely not rooting for the Panthers as much as I was last year, if that makes sense.
Yes. Well, that'll do it for us here on today's episode of Locked On Flames. Thank you all so much for joining us. Where can people find your work?
Yeah, so you can find me at thewincolumn.ca. I think it's wincolumn.cgy on all of our social medias. I actually just put a post out today about Nazem Kadri and the Flames maybe exploring that center market, as I suggested that at the trade deadline as well. And I mean, Colorado was one of the teams, and I kind of suggested Callum Ritchie as one of the guys, and then he got traded for Brock Nelson. So the center market is hot. There's not a lot of centers. I kind of dug into that and said the Flames should maybe look to trade Kadri. So that's out there. You can also check out some pieces that Jess has put out, that I've put out, that the rest of our great team has put out, and yeah, catch us. We also have a podcast that we've launched, so you can check that out as well. We have lots of good stuff. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for hanging out with us, and make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your podcasts as well as YouTube. We are here for you Monday through Friday, 5 days a week, your team every day. And hopefully tomorrow I'll be back with some super fun and exciting news, like the Flames actually making a trade or doing anything.